I just moved into a new house. I think it's haunted. When I saw the listing, it felt like fate. A charming Victorian house on the outskirts of town, ridiculously underpriced, and with just the right amount of old-world charm to make me swoon. The real estate agent called it a fixer-upper, but I didn't care. I was ready for a fresh start after my divorce, and this house felt like the perfect place to rebuild my life. I should have asked more questions. The house was as beautiful in person as it was in the photos. A wraparound porch with creaky wooden steps, stained glass windows that caught the sunlight just right, and a sprawling yard that stretched into a thick line of trees. Sure, it needed a little TLC, peeling wallpaper, warped floorboards, but it had potential. The first night, however, I felt it, a heaviness in the air, like the house was holding its breath. I chalked it up to exhaustion and an overactive imagination. Moving is stressful, after all, but the feeling never went away. It started small. On my second night, as I was unpacking boxes in the kitchen, I heard footsteps upstairs. Slow, deliberate steps, as if someone was pacing. My heart leapt into my throat. I grabbed the nearest thing, a frying pan, and crept up the staircase, every creak of the wooden steps amplifying my fear. The hallway was empty. I checked every room, even the closets. Nothing. Maybe it was just the house settling, I told myself. Old houses make noises. But then it happened again. Over the next few days, more strange things began to occur. Lights flickered, even though the wiring had supposedly been updated. Doors that I knew I had closed were suddenly open. And the footsteps, they never stopped. Always upstairs, always slow and purposeful. Then came the whispers. At first, I thought it was the wind. The trees surrounding the house swayed constantly, their branches tapping against the windows. But one night, as I was lying in bed, I heard them, faint voices, just below the threshold of understanding, coming from the walls. I sat up, straining to hear. Leave. It was so quiet I almost convinced myself I'd imagined it. Almost. By the end of the first week, I was exhausted. The house didn't feel like mine. It felt like I was trespassing, like something unseen was watching me, waiting for me to leave. I decided to explore the attic, a space I'd been avoiding since moving in. The trapdoor was stiff, and the ladder groaned under my weight. Dust filled the air as I pulled myself up, the dim beam of my flashlight cutting through the darkness. The attic was massive, filled with cobweb-covered furniture, old trunks, and forgotten relics of the past. But in the far corner, something caught my eye, a small, child-sized rocking chair facing the wall. As I approached, I noticed it wasn't empty. A stuffed bear, its fur matted and eyes missing, sat in the chair. I reached out to touch it, and that's when I heard the laugh. It was high-pitched, childlike, and echoing, as though it came from all around me. I stumbled back, nearly falling through the trapdoor. The rocking chair creaked as it began to move, the bear swaying with it. I didn't stop running until I was outside, my heart pounding in my chest. I called the real estate agent the next morning. She sounded nervous when I mentioned the strange occurrences. "Well, it is an old house," she said hesitantly. "And there are stories." "Stories?" I demanded. She sighed. "The previous owners left abruptly. They claimed the house was haunted." Claimed? There were rumors of a little girl who died there in the early 1900s. Fell down the stairs, they said. But it's probably just local legend. Her words did nothing to calm me. That night, I decided to confront whatever was in the house. Armed with a candle and a sense of desperation, I sat in the middle of the living room and spoke aloud. "If someone is here," I said, my voice trembling, "I just want to understand. I'm not here to hurt you." For a moment, there was silence. Then, the candle flickered violently, and the temperature in the room dropped. My breath came out in visible puffs. The whispers returned, louder this time. "Get out." The words were clear, unmistakable. And then, from the corner of the room, I saw her. A small figure, no taller than a child, stood in the shadows. Her face was pale, her hair matted, and her eyes were hollow, dark pits that seemed to pull the light from the room. She pointed at me, her lips moving soundlessly, but I knew what she was saying. "You don't belong here." I left that night. I didn't even pack. I just grabbed my keys and drove until the house was a distant memory in my rearview mirror. The house is still there, waiting for its next tenant. If you ever see a listing for a charming Victorian home with a wraparound porch and stained glass windows, don't let the price tempt you. Some houses are cheap for a reason.